Let's stay with more reaction from the budget speech and speak now to Youth Capital Project lead Kristal Duncan Williams. Thank you so much for your time. There's a view that this budget could have been worse and that it is balanced, according to some, given the challenges that South Africa faces currently. Your reaction?
Yes, I think at Youth Capital we've been pushing particularly hard for the extension of the presidential employment stimulus, particularly the Basic Education Employment Initiative. So we're encouraged to see that there's another year of funding there. While it's less money than we were hoping for, we've seen cuts across all of public employment programs. And I think in the current financial climate, that was to be expected. So a mixed reaction from us, but as many people are saying, given the constraints, the financial constraints, the minister himself saying the pie is just not big enough. I think the kind of outcome that is balanced and what we would have hoped for at a minimum. So that's encouraging.
And I suppose then it also, of course, comes into sharp focus as we've now received even the latest fourth quarter figures when it comes to unemployment. And that in and itself is a concern. Did you get a sense that there is some hope when it comes to, economic growth as well as job creation in this regard?
So I think what we would have liked to have seen more of is more incentives or more money being put.
Kristal?
They're the ones that are really creating jobs at this point. Am I back? Sorry.
We lost you a bit. You can continue. We have you back now.
Sorry, thanks. So we know that small and medium businesses are the ones that are creating the jobs for young people. And really, we think that's where the missed opportunities are. So we're a bit disappointed that there wasn't more of a focus on how are we going to create a more inclusive environment for small businesses, particularly given the challenges they're facing with load shedding and a stagnant economy, and maybe some economic reforms that would have led to small business growth and a little bit more of a focus there. I think that the focus on infrastructure development, particularly the comments with regards to PRASA, are encouraging. We need a functional transport system, both freight and for public transport. So hopefully there's delivery there. We've had promises about infrastructure development over many budget speeches and many sonars, but we hope that we'll see some movement there, because that's really what we need to grow the economy. 0.6% growth is not what we need. The numbers we've crunched say we need 10 times that to create enough jobs for all of the young people not in employment, education, or training. But we hope that this new, less severe austerity budget than we saw in the medium-term budget in October will help a little bit of economic growth, and the market seem to be reacting well to that as well.
And I suppose then, this mixed reaction even around the SRD grant, the fact that there will be improvement to that as well, but we don't know what form it will take. By now we know that the minister is saying that all of this will be made clear by April this year. But a lot of people are looking to this as well to say that it also helps somewhat, especially when it comes to some of those unemployed young people.
Yes, we just released a report last week on the cost of job seeking and found that young people can spend up to 1,400 a month just on looking for work. And 3 in 10 young people responded to the survey say that they use grants to fund their work seeking behavior. And that includes things like the SRD grant and the pension grant. So I think all of us were hoping for a little bit more clarity around the SRD grant, the continuation, the amount. But I think the minister's walking a fine and balancing act there, knowing it's an election year, but also being quite cash strapped to increase that by any sort of significant amount. So I think we're all waiting to see more clarity. It doesn't seem anybody seems to have any insights there, and I guess we'll have to wait for April.
And one of the things that the minister says, while he says that there mustn't be complete pessimism, there mustn't be complete blind optimism, there must be a bit of a balance of both. But when you then hear the fact that the pie is not big enough and it continues to not meet the developmental needs that South Africa is faced with and the government is trying to prioritize, what does this mean then in the context of making sure that the service delivery, in the context of making sure that, as you say, small businesses are also receiving some of the support that they need?
So I think given an election year, the minister really tried to go sort of light touch. I don't think it's, from a political point of view, it doesn't make sense to kind of get super innovative or very restrictive with how money is spent. But I do think that's what we need. I think it's encouraging if you look at some of the party manifestos that have come out, that there's some really sort of almost crazy ideas about how to stimulate the economy and what's needed, wealth taxes, increase corporate taxes, those kinds of things to increase the size of the pie. And I think we're going to have to get a little less populist in in our approaches and a little bit innovative if we are going to dig ourselves out of this hole, because, the stagnant growth has been persistent over a number of years now. And so it's clear that, what we're doing isn't working. Obviously, load shedding is a huge contributor, and getting the lights on will help to a degree, but it's not going to solve all of our problems. And I am interested to see, what the ANC's manifesto says with regards to this.
And also, something that is also quite interesting that, one would also think about is something that has been raised over time is the fact that the individual governments need to also realize that they're working within the same government and not working in silos. So whatever it is that the minister says must also be translated into those very departments as well.
Yeah, exactly. And even from, national down to provincial and municipal level, how are we thinking about the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. And when it comes to employment, it really cuts across all departments. We often hear arguments for a separate Ministry of Youth, for example, and that goes to your point. We already have the siloed approach in our current ministry infrastructure. And that does lead to some of the problems. You need education, you need higher education, you need social development and support. And then you obviously need Department of Labour to think creatively about how to create these jobs. You've got the public works program with all of the public employment programs. So all of these pieces really need to speak to each other. And to date, they haven't. And it's why we at Youth Capital always say we have failed to tackle the crisis of youth unemployment, in large part to the fact that we haven't acknowledged the complexities that young people face and the layered systemic barriers they face, and then think of complex solutions to these problems, not, singular silver bullets, which has been the case previously.
All right. Thank you so much for your reaction. That is Kristal Duncan Williams, Youth Capital Project Lead.